How about that finale, huh? There were, of course, a lot of different ways for the ending of this show to go, and somehow they managed to pick one that I don't think any of us were really expecting, and yet probably ended up being one of the best endings that they could have picked. If it wasn't clear by the title of this video, this is a full spoiler review of The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 8, the finale. If you haven't seen it, and please, if there is an episode you want to go into without spoilers, it is this one. Please save this video for later and come back after you've seen the episode. Trust me, it will have been worth it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing more Mandalorian content, as well as a bunch of other things, Soul review, Wonder Woman review. So stay tuned to the channel. Thank you guys so much for the support, and let's get into the review. Yeah, so, nothing really happened in this episode. Nothing that important, I don't think. Oh, I got it. Yes, we finally get to see Slave One fighting TIE Fighters. Yes. Best moment of the minute. No, okay, it's Luke Skywalker. Oh my gosh. What an ending. Okay, so we have Luke Skywalker, and he is obviously the biggest and probably the best part of this episode, but we have to talk about a bunch of other things that happened before, so we'll save Luke Skywalker for the end, but let's talk about some of the other things that happened in this episode, because this episode as a whole is interesting. To be completely honest with you guys, the first half, or maybe 1/3 of this episode, I actually didn't like that much. It was okay. It was like a typical heist, I guess, a rescue mission. I just felt like some of the dialogue was pretty clunky, though, towards the beginning, especially the interrogation scene with Dr. Parshing. This is one of my least favorite cold opens, I think. And Peyton Reed, by the way, he directed episode 10, chapter 10 of The Mandalorian. He also directed this episode, the finale. But even though episode 10 was not my favorite episode, in fact, it's probably my least favorite episode of season 2, that had one of the best cold opens out of any of the episodes in season 2. So the fact that this cold open was not so good didn't make me that happy. And then on top of that, yes, I did think it was very cool to see Boba Fett and Sasha Banks' character. I think her name is Casca Reeves. I thought their fight was interesting, and it's going to set up a conflict that I believe will pay off in later seasons of The Mandalorian, or whatever crossover show they're planning on doing. We'll talk about spin-off shows in just a little bit. But again, it just sort of felt like it was there for the sake of setting something up. And then when Bo-Katan is breaking everything down, it's like, oh yes, the bridge is here, and we're going to split up into phase 1 and phase 2. I was like, okay, cool, I guess. So the first half of the episode, yes, I was like, okay, this is fine, it's cool. And I know I made a joke about it earlier, but I mean, it is really cool seeing Slave One fight TIE Fighters. It really is. If you guys know me, I am a huge fan of Slave One. I've said it before in many of my Mandalorian videos. I love and adore that ship. So seeing it do basically anything in The Mandalorian just makes me so happy. But they're off on their journey, they're on Gideon's light cruiser, and the action begins. Now, I've heard a lot of people talking about, in a positive way, talking about the 4 women that are fighting the stormtroopers and making their way throughout the light cruiser. And I have to say, I agree with a lot of people that are talking about it in a positive way, because I think that this was done extremely organically, and it shows how, when building up characters first, instead of just trying to have a forced moment, it works a lot better. I love Avengers Endgame, and I am all for empowerment of different groups of people, whether it be females or African Americans, Asians, Latinos, whoever it may be. But yeah, Avengers Endgame was kind of forced, right? They all just happened to be in one place together. This, in The Mandalorian, felt organic, and that was super cool to see. Although again, I will give a side note. I said this before, I believe last episode, or maybe the episode before for my review, but Gina Carano's acting is slowly getting worse and worse in my opinion. It's starting to annoy me more and more each episode. Like towards the beginning, they didn't give her a lot of dialogue, and she was doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of action and physicality, so she was really cool in those scenes, but the more she talks and the more she delivers lines, I don't know. And again, it has absolutely zero to do with the personal conflicts that she's having in her real life. It's just me being a little bit annoyed by her performance. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but whatever, just a side note. On the other hand, I think Ming-Na Wen's Fennec Shand is growing on me more and more. When we first saw her in season 1, I was like, this is a throwaway character played by a brilliant actress. Sure enough, she comes back in season 2. Each episode she's in, she is amazing, and we are probably going to get to see some more of her, a lot more of her in the future. Cannot wait for that. We'll get to that in just a little bit. So the 4 women are basically the misdirection while Mando is going off and looking for Grogu. And yes, we knew that he would encounter Moff Gideon at a certain point, but we also knew that he would probably encounter the Dark Troopers, and so he did. And I have to say, they were pretty intimidating. And I did think it was kind of interesting how he just kind of blew them all out of an airlock. I did laugh out loud. I was like, well, that was anticlimactic. We know later, of course, that it's going to come back in a big way, but at the moment I was like, oh, this is odd. But yes, he opens the prison doors, and you knew, whether or not it was a bunch of stormtroopers or Moff Gideon, which it ended up being, somebody was going to be there in front of Grogu. Sure enough, Moff Gideon with the Darksaber. Now here is my first sort of big takeaway from the episode. So in this season of Mandalorian, we've been getting little hints as to where and when and how this connects to the larger Skywalker saga story. Whether or not you like that it connects at all is up to you, but it is connecting in some way. We got a huge hint in episode 4 with the Snoke clones, right? Dr. Parshing saying we need the blood, we need the donor, blah, blah, blah. So here in this scene, Moff Gideon is talking to Din Djarin, and he's saying, well, I have the blood. So okay, stop there. We know that Moff Gideon gets captured or something at the end of this episode, blah, blah, blah. We'll get to that later. But here, he is telling Din Djarin, and I don't think he's lying. For as evil as a guy as Moff Gideon is, I don't think he's lied to anybody thus far. He's basically told the truth. So he has the blood. He has what he needs to create whatever it is he's trying to create, whether or not it's Snoke or Palpatine, or I've heard theories that it's going to be Palpatine's son they're trying to give force powers, whoever it may be. And then he has a line that really struck me. It was seemingly offhanded, but I think it actually has a huge significance. Because in saying that, he says a line, and I don't have the exact quote, I'm going to paraphrase it here, but there is one word to keep an eye out for. He says something to the effect of, we are doing this to establish order. The word order. Now, for those of you who remember a little film called Star Wars The Force Awakens, apparently came out 5 years ago on the same day as the finale. That's crazy to me. But anyways, The Force Awakens, if you don't remember, their fleet was called the First Order. Now, I know in canon and in the books, there's this whole backstory of Hux kind of taking the remnant of the Empire, going into the unknown regions or something. I don't follow the books too closely. I do know about the loose parts of the canon, like the Battle of Jakku and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not entirely sure if this contradicts that canon. Like if Moff Gideon being a part of the First Order or the fledgling First Order contradicts with any of the canon. I'm not entirely sure. I suspect it doesn't. Filoni is a genius. He knows every aspect of the canon. So I would say no. And that leads to the question of, is Moff Gideon a part of the First Order? Will we see people like General Hux, Captain Phasma in future seasons of different shows? It's entirely possible, because if they have the blood, they have the ability to create Snoke. So that was the first thing that I picked up on. I think it's really interesting how they're laying the seeds for that. And that leads me to a second point. We're going to get to all the Luke Skywalker goodness in just a second, but let me just talk about the Mandalorian's place in Star Wars lore for just a little bit. So going into The Mandalorian in Season 1, all those years ago, it was about a year ago actually, people thought, okay, The Mandalorian is just going to be a side story that takes place in between 6 and 7, but just a little side story, right? Well, yeah, it turns out we were all completely wrong, because no, it is definitely a bridge between 6 and 7. Just like how Rogue One is a bridge between 3 and 4, The Mandalorian is actually acting as a bridge between 6 and 7. Now, is this a good idea for Star Wars? To me, yes and no. You have to be careful. If you just wanted to tell a true story that really tells the story of what happened between 6 and 7, just because you want to tell that story, then yeah, have Luke Skywalker be the main character, have him training Kylo Ren, show the destruction of the temple, all that sort of stuff. But that's not what this show is. This show is The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian is the main character. However, thus far, while it has been a bridge between 6 and 7, it has done so in a way where it keeps the focus on Mandalorian, on Din Djarin, and Grogu, and has these sort of guest appearances that help bridge the gap. So he can be a part of the conspiracy of the First Order and the rise of Snoke and all that sort of stuff, as long as the focus is on him. I don't need to see him fighting Snoke one-on-one. I hope he doesn't do that. But if he is present at the time of Snoke's rise to power, then I have no problem with that, because that is a huge deal in the entire galaxy. And yeah, if Mando is sort of tied up in this plot and he meets Luke Skywalker, then I have no problem with that. Again, if next season of The Mandalorian, and we'll talk about if there is a next season of The Mandalorian, if next season is just Luke Skywalker with Grogu, I have a problem, because that's called missing information between 6 and 7, a Star Wars story, and that's not what this show is. So for now, we're okay with it. At least I am. But if the show deviates, then we got a problem. Again, I'm fine with them having an Ahsoka show, because they clearly didn't want her to be the focus of The Mandalorian, and I'm happy about that. If they want to make a spin-off Luke Skywalker show, I'm not entirely sure I'd be happy with that, but I'd watch it. But at any rate, I think The Mandalorian is in a good place right now. Anyways, back to the story. So yes, when Gideon says you can go, I mean, that is the one time he just straight up lies because we know that's not true. Mandalorian kind of believes it is. He walks out and he is struck by the Darksaber. And I do really like how, I don't know if this is a retcon or just introducing it into the lore and the canon, that Beskar is able to withstand lightsaber blows because that makes for a really intriguing and new kind of fighting style. Where Mando isn't using the Beskar spear at first. He's using his gauntlets, he's using his helmet even, he's trying to fend off Gideon any way he can, and that scene where, the helmet is just getting bashed into the wall, that was pretty brutal, actually. Now, was this fight as epic as I would have hoped for? Not really. Would I have hoped for an Ahsoka versus Gideon just full-on lightsaber fight? Probably. But this was good enough, and yes, it gave way to a much bigger moment at the end of the show. So Mando takes Grogu and Gideon to the bridge. Grogu and Gideon, that's an interesting sitcom name. Anyways, there are all the Mandalorians, and we have this really interesting conflict now between Bo-Katan and Mando with the Darksaber. Now, interestingly enough, what I've heard and what's been brought up is that I believe Sabine Wren just handed over the Darksaber to Bo-Katan. Is that a plot hole? Or are they going to explain that away later in later seasons of The Mandalorian, just like how they did with the helmet thing? It probably is going to be explained, but that does seem like a pretty odd way to do it when you literally just had Dave Filoni directing Rebels and had Sabine hand over the Darksaber. But at any rate, and also it kind of sets up this interesting scenario of, well, I mean, Mando didn't kill Gideon, right? So they could have a fight where Mando just, pretends to get beat around or whatever, and then Bo-Katan can just take the saber. He doesn't have to kill Mando, right? So while the moment itself was cool in concept, and I think it sets up a really interesting conflict for where they want to go in future seasons, I also think it was kind of clunky if you kind of think about the canon and think about the repercussions of what they set up. Because again, by these rules, right, if Mando is the owner of the Darksaber, Bo-Katan and he can just have a sort of play fight where she knocks him over and grabs the Darksaber and she's the ruler of Mandalore, right? Maybe. I don't know. Anyways. But then the Dark Troopers are back, and this was the moment where I went, oh boy, here we go. And now at this point, I didn't even think of Jedi. I just thought, okay, it's just going to be one final last stand, and we're going to get a huge action scene. It's going to be great, Darksaber, all that sort of stuff. And then the X-Wing comes in. Now, I have to tell you, when that X-Wing came on, they said it's a single X-Wing. I literally thought, I don't know why I thought this. Maybe I've been thinking about Kim's Convenience. I do love that show, by the way. Season 5 is coming out really soon, but I've been thinking about Paul Lee, who plays that X-Wing fighter, Carson Teva, I think, and I was like, oh, it's Carson Teva, and he's going to lead a fleet of New Republic X-Wings, and they're all going to blow up the cruiser and blah, blah, blah. So I thought it was him, because he'd been appearing in previous episodes of The Mandalorian Season 2, right? And I thought he was going to lead a huge squadron of X-Wings, and they were all going to blow up the ship and the Dark Troopers, and it was going to be a huge space battle at the end. Great. And then no one came. And then I was like, wait, what's happening? I think the recognition for me came a split second before the cloak. Before I saw the cloak on that little surveillance screen, I think for a split second before that I went, oh! And then I saw the cloak and my jaw dropped to the floor. Now it's interesting because, yes, practically speaking, they couldn't show Luke Skywalker because of CGI. They didn't want to show his face the whole time because of the CGI. And yes, we'll get to the CGI in just a second. But it was interesting, too, how they kept him a secret for so long because there was a moment throughout the action scene where I was like, is that Ezra, though? Like, are we being misdirected really hard right now? Is that Ezra Bridger? Because I think he has a green lightsaber, right? So I was like, well, it could be Ezra. Maybe they're just doing a huge misdirect thing. He's going to take off the cloak and it's Ezra Bridger. And Bo-Katan's like, oh, I know you, Ezra Bridger. And then I saw the gloved hand. And then I saw the bare hand. And I was like, well, I think we know who it is. And sure enough, he enters the bridge, takes off the hood. It's Luke Skywalker. So the question for me before he did that was, well, how are they going to do it? Is it going to be a different actor, Sebastian Stan? Is it going to be Mark Hamill? Turns out it was Mark Hamill. Like, I didn't know at the time if it was just me because I was tired and it was late at night and my eyesight was not good at the time. And I was just delirious because of what I was seeing. But I looked at it and I went, oh, is that CGI? Because that's not that great. And yes, sure enough, it was Mark Hamill in CGI. And yes, it wasn't great. Now, for all the people saying it is Mark Hamill's voice, I get that it's Mark Hamill's voice, but they had to have done something to it because it didn't sound like Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker, and I don't think it sounded like Last Jedi Luke Skywalker either, so they did some weird in-between modulation where I was like, wait a second, is that a different actor? That's what made me question for a couple seconds, but no, it's CGI Mark Hamill. And listen, the CGI is not good, but who cares, right? Who cares? And this leads me to the second point that I really wanted to talk about this episode, which is Luke Skywalker from the original trilogy to the sequel trilogy. Now let me talk to my Last Jedi hater friends out there. Again, this is not a diss to you or shade. I'm just saying for those of you who don't like The Last Jedi, I'm going to talk to you guys for just a second. The big reason that a lot of people don't like The Last Jedi is the handling of Luke Skywalker. They really thought that they were going to get a green lightsaber wielding Luke Skywalker cutting down the First Order and being the Jedi Master that everyone thought he was. And so when we got the Luke Skywalker who was on the island and who threw the lightsaber over his shoulder, everyone was up in arms because this isn't Luke Skywalker. Rian Johnson destroyed the character, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm going to just say this really briefly, though. Luke Skywalker, in The Last Jedi, had 30 years of past behind him. Now, I know what you guys are saying. Well, it doesn't matter. Narratively, you could blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. I'm just saying that the Luke Skywalker that we got in The Last Jedi had 30 years of history where his nephew killed almost all of his students, took a bunch of them, and became this cult of the Knights of Ren, and Luke Skywalker went into hiding. That is Luke Skywalker that we're dealing with. That is Luke Skywalker, by the way, that J.J. Abrams set up, not Rian Johnson, so you can have that conversation, but anyways. And a lot of people were complaining, we just wanted to see a Darth Vader-esque scene for Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, and that's great. You know, I would have loved to see that too, if it narratively fit. Because guess what? The Last Jedi didn't narratively fit that sort of ending for Luke Skywalker. I don't think, at least. I mean, he could have flown all the way across the universe and sliced up the walkers, but I think ultimately, just me personally, what they delivered on the ending was basically in line with what the character was. Anyways, that is the end of Luke Skywalker's journey. But there is a period of time where there was 30 years of that Darth Vader Rogue One-esque Luke Skywalker that is out there in canon. It's not like Rian Johnson just completely took that out of Luke Skywalker's character. It is there. We just didn't see it. And yes, at the time we didn't think we would ever see it, but I watched The Last Jedi with the understanding that yes, 20 years before The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker was like Darth Vader in Rogue One. He was cutting down stormtroopers. He was being a Jedi Knight, Jedi Master. We just didn't get to see it. That's part of the reason why I'm okay, amongst other reasons. I do really enjoy Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, but part of the reason why I'm very much okay with that decision in The Last Jedi. But now we get to see it in The Mandalorian. We get to see who that Luke Skywalker was. So to those of you out there who hate what Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi, I think The Mandalorian makes The Last Jedi a better movie because you are able to see what Luke Skywalker was and then what he was transitioning to as he saw the downfall of his Jedi Academy. By the way, guys, that's called character growth. 30 years have gone by. It's character growth. So you're able to see the different stages now. You've seen what Luke Skywalker in his prime looks like now, and that was a glorious scene. We'll talk about it in just a second, but it was a glorious scene that shows what he was at the height of his powers, and we just happened to see the ending of it before we saw this. I think that's why a lot of people were upset. If you hate The Last Jedi, and you hate it because of Luke Skywalker, or because of other reasons, that's totally fine. I'm just putting this out there that maybe, hopefully, this Mandalorian scene made The Last Jedi better. That's all I'm saying. And yes, the Luke Skywalker action scene was incredible. It was the Darth Vader Rogue One scene of Luke Skywalker. It was everything that I wanted from the character. It was just, oh man, it was just so good. Everything I wanted from Luke Skywalker in his prime. And again, like I said before, as long as Luke Skywalker doesn't become the central character of The Mandalorian, I'm fine with that. Now let's talk about the ending. So Grogu goes off with Luke Skywalker and R2-D2, presumably to be trained. And yeah, so if he doesn't come back, which he will, we'll talk about that. But, yeah, Kylo Ren's gonna murder him, and nobody's gonna be happy about that. So, you know. Yeah, about Ben Solo being redeemed in The Rise of Skywalker, no, that's not happening anymore if he kills Grogu. So, but he's not. And my theory is, look, because Mando, Din Djarin, and by the way, really touching moment when he takes off the helmet, he looks to Grogu and he says, I'm gonna see you again, I promise. I have a feeling that maybe something that happens is like, maybe we'll see the destruction of the Jedi Temple or something like that. Maybe Grogu escapes and Mandalorian rescues him somewhere or something. Like maybe Luke's like, you gotta take him back. I can't take him anymore. Hide him or something. I think maybe that's sort of where we're going with this. And then Luke Skywalker goes into hiding. Because again, if you kill Grogu now, nobody's gonna watch The Mandalorian. I think Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau know this. So they're gonna meet again. Now the question is when. So if you saw the post-credit scene, and I made a video about this at like 2 a.m. in the morning, talking about, well, what does the Book of Boba Fett mean? It's coming December 2021. Is this a separate series? Since then, Pedro Pascal's body double has seemed to indicate this is a spin-off series, and that lends to the theory that I pointed out in that video, which is the theory that the Book of Boba Fett is going to be a spin-off series that's going to happen in December 2021. That's sort of what The Mandalorian Season 3 was masquerading as, I guess. And then they're going to come back and do a big crossover series with Ahsoka, Rangers, Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, I don't know. And then we're going to get Mando Season 3. I think the best analogy is really the Defenders. You did Daredevil Season 1, Daredevil Season 2, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and then the Defenders, and then Daredevil Season 3. I think it's basically the same thing. Because people have been saying, well, what if you just do Boba Fett and Mando 3 at the same time? I don't think Disney would do that. I think Disney right now, at least right now, as they're beginning to ramp up Disney Plus, is trying to have content every single week. I don't think they would waste 2 of their prime series to be going at the same time, right? Because right after Mando Season 2 is WandaVision, and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then Loki, and then What If? So they're trying to back their content so that we never run out, which is a good strategy, by the way. So I do think that there are plenty of things to be set up for Season 3 of The Mandalorian, and we are not going to see the last of Pedro Pascal. You have the Darksaber, you have Gideon, you have Snoke, you have Mandalore. There are so many things to be set up. But then there is this other story with Boba Fett and Fennec Shand. Great post-credit scenes, by the way. And so I just don't think that we've seen the last of Pedro Pascal's Mando. I don't. And I don't think Pedro Pascal thinks so either. I think he said in interviews that he wants to come back. I know there is this alleged drama between him and Disney. Again, if it's true or not, I don't think it matters that much because I think they've worked it out at this point. Pedro Pascal's been going around in interviews saying he's loved being Mandalorian. He's loved the experience. So again, I think we're going to see him again. I think maybe they're just going to take a break from Grogu and Mando, and we're going to see some awesome Ahsoka, some awesome Boba Fett for a while. So rest assured, Mando and Grogu are coming back. I can guarantee you of that. Anyways, that has been my review of the season finale of Mandalorian, but that is not all Mandalorian content coming from this channel. We are going to be doing a full review, spoilers probably, of The Mandalorian Season 2. I'm probably going to be making videos ranking all 16 episodes from The Mandalorian, so stay tuned on the channel, subscribe if you haven't already for that content coming your way. In the meantime, what did you guys think of this awesome finale of The Mandalorian? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and give this video a like. And if you want to check out some more, check out the videos on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.